In this video, we will discuss redox reactions and the electron transport chain. We've already talked about the fact that ATP is produced, at least the bulk of it is, by coupling the energy released by the exergonic process of diffusion of hydrogen ions to the endergonic process of building ATP. Now we're going to start discussing how we maintain the gradient of hydrogen ions across a membrane. To do that, first, we need to discuss redox reactions. Okay, so redox is a word that's a contraction of two other words, reduction and oxidation. And both of these describe the transfer of electrons. Losing one or more electrons is oxidation, while gaining one or more electrons is reduction. Okay, wait, why do we call gaining electrons reduction? That doesn't sound like it makes sense at all. Well, think about the fact that the charge of whatever molecule or atom that's gaining electrons is being reduced in charge. Because electrons are negatively charged, every time a molecule gains an electron, the charge is reduced by 1. You can also remember oil rig, which stands for oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. Hopefully that's a handy way for you to remember the difference between these two words. Let's look at a simple example. We've already learned about ionic bonds, which are the attraction between positively charged ions and negatively charged ions. And sometimes an ionic bond is preceded by electron transfer from one atom or molecule to another. In this animation, sodium is giving up an electron to fluorine. Which atom here is being reduced? Hopefully you said fluorine because it is gaining an electron. And sodium is being oxidized because it is losing an electron. And this could be described as a redox reaction because something's being oxidized and something's being reduced. Many molecules can exist in either an oxidized form or a reduced form. For example, this molecule, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or NAD, can exist either as NAD+ or as NADH. NAD+ is the oxidized form of the molecule. When it acquires 2 electrons, which is a reduction reaction, it also, by the way, picks up a hydrogen ion, then it becomes NADH, which is the reduced form of the molecule because it has 2 more electrons than the oxidized form. NAD is an electron carrier, and it is critically important in aerobic respiration. So we're going to see this molecule again when we get to cellular respiration. It functions to accept electrons from glucose and other organic molecules as they're broken down during the process of cellular respiration. It then delivers those electrons to an electron transport chain, which is what maintains the hydrogen ion gradient that allows chemiosmosis to take place. All right, that brings us right to the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain is an important part of aerobic cellular respiration, but an electron transport chain also functions in the light-dependent reactions of photosynthesis. This is just a generalized diagram showing a generic electron transport chain. What is an electron transport chain? Well, it's a series of proteins and other molecules that pass electrons from molecule to molecule. So here we have an electron donor, which is passing an electron to the first protein in the electron transport chain, which is shown in pink. That's transferring an electron to the molecule shown in yellow. That one is transferring an electron to the molecule shown in blue. That's transferring an electron to the molecule shown in purple. And then the purple molecule is transferring electrons to an electron acceptor, which is outside this electron transport chain. Now, each electron transfer is a redox reaction because something is being oxidized. That's whichever molecule is losing the electrons, and something is being reduced. That's whatever molecule that is accepting the electrons. And you can see that each of these is actually going to be reduced and then oxidized as it gains an electron and then passes an electron to the next molecule in the chain. And this process of transferring electrons is exergonic. Energy is released as high-energy electrons are passed from one molecule to another. And here's the important part. Some of the energy that's released by this exergonic process, which is the passing of electrons, is used to power an endergonic reaction. That endergonic reaction is the active transport of hydrogen ions against their gradient. You can see that diagrammed here across the pink and blue molecule with that arrow going up and H plus at the end of it. All right, so why does the cell spend energy in order to do that? Well, it's because this hydrogen ion gradient, the difference in concentration across the membrane, is absolutely essential for the function of ATP synthase. Remember that ATP synthase produces ATP, which is an endergonic process because we're building something up. And the energy to power this reaction is the energy released by hydrogen ions diffusing down their concentration gradient. So we have to maintain that concentration gradient at all times. Otherwise, ATP synthase would cease to function, and we would lose the ability to make the bulk of the ATP that we need to produce every second. Okay, so then the way we do that is by harnessing the energy released by an electron transport chain to power the endergonic process of active transport of hydrogen ions that creates and maintains the gradient such that hydrogen ions can now flow down their gradient through ATP synthase and power the production of ATP.